Welcome back to another episode of our Eagle Perspective podcast. I'm Mike Siciliano, and I am joined today by one of our upper school academic counselors, Miss Nancy Olah. Nancy, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mike. Honored to be here and to speak on behalf of our department.
Well, a couple things. We're going to talk all things college and college counseling today. I noticed you brought a mug that says UCLA on it, which as a USC person, I find personally disappointing. Like, nobody gave me a heads up about this. What is it about that mug that you're drawn to?
Well, UCLA is actually my alma mater, and my husband and I have a mixed marriage. So, he went to USC, I went to UCLA, but love is blind, and we're united in Christ. So there you go.
Since I wasn't given the opportunity to bring my USC mug.
Right.
I did at least find some red.
Oh, very nice.
So I feel like we should at least balance the table
a
little bit for our viewers out there.
There you go. I love my USC friends.
No, and the same for UCLA. It's an amazing institution. So
As is
friendly
USC.
Rivalry, of course.
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little about how long you've been at Santa Fe and what you do here?
Yeah, so this is my 14th year at Santa Fe. And previously, I was at a private school up in West Los Angeles. And just God opened a door for us to come here, and it's just been a great journey so far. This is a wonderful place. Love being a college counselor here.
So you are the one here, but you are one of three that we have. Tell us a little bit about the counseling department at Santa Fe and what else it looks like.
Right. So our counseling department, I believe, is one of the best in San Diego County. I mean, if I do say so myself, we have 3 full-time academic counselors. We divide the alpha split into thirds. So, we all have our own group of students that we work with one-on-one. But students and parents are free to just ask any of us for general questions. If they like testing, if they have a question about testing, all 3 of us would say the same thing and provide the same answers. But what's nice about our model is that they have students and parents have a devoted counselor to go to and to talk about their students' unique needs. It might seem like, oh, wow, you have such a great caseload, and we do. We are so blessed. I mean, some of our colleagues in the public schools are just overwhelmed, and they're dealing with crises. And they can't really devote time to good students who are just to
put some
well.
numbers to that, our classes on the big end are maybe 120, and we have 3 full-time counselors. So we're talking an average senior class, you have about 40 students.
Correct, right.
Which is a really small number.
And it's great because then we can really get to know students. And if students say, hey, I really want to do something creative and maybe do something a little bit out of the ordinary, then it gives us the opportunity to work with that student one-on-one on those things. Yeah.
Awesome. And you've been a college counselor here now for, 12, 13 years?
14 years.
14 years.
Yeah,
But that has not been the entirety of your experience in education. I think you were actually a principal. Am I saying that
I was.
properly? Okay. So you've had a number of jobs in the field of education.
Right.
What made you pivot to counseling and obviously stick with it?
Right. So I started off as a teacher in the classroom, and for the last couple years at my previous school, I was in administration. And throughout my time in education in Los Angeles, I wore a lot of different hats. And I find the role of an academic counselor to be the most rewarding. I get to work with students and families one-on-one. I get to be a lifelong learner, which I really love. I get to travel. So this weekend, I'm going to a university that invited me to be part of a counselor fly-in program. So I get to learn all about that school and come back and share about it with our students. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. I get to be a little bit of a teacher, a little bit of an administrator, and certainly a lifelong learner. So that's
I'm a little jealous because I don't really get to do much traveling in my role. So what you're telling me is if I want to see the world, I need to move on over to the counseling center.
I think I have the best job on campus.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about college in general, and we'll get to our process and specifically what you do with students and at what age and what that looks like. But I kind of want to start with a broad question. So I'll date myself a little bit. I graduated from high school 20 years ago. I can't believe it's true, but it's true. What has changed about the college admissions process between then and now?
I would say quite a lot has changed, but yet at the essence, it's still like the core is still the same. And what I mean with that is colleges are still looking for academically motivated students, students who want to challenge themselves in the classroom as well as engage in their community and just be great roommates. So that hasn't changed. What has changed are the vehicles and the modes in which students can apply to schools. And because of that, because of technology changing, I mean, again, I'm going to date myself too, but when I applied to UCLA, I rolled my application into a typewriter and filled it out that way.
But that's only because you were into antiques.
Right.
That was more of a hobby.
That's right.
Yeah.
But now with things like the Common App and with the UC application being available electronically, students can apply to 20 schools using the Common App, all 9 using the UC application. So because of that, it makes the process a little bit more selective. So oftentimes I hear parents saying, oh my gosh, back in my day, everyone got into San Diego State. And that might have been true, but nowadays it has definitely become more selective of a school just because technology has changed the number of applications colleges receive and internationally too. Our educational system is the envy of the world.
So just to kind of put a fine point on that, because when I was applying the Common App, it wasn't really a thing.
Right.
Like most of the schools, or a lot of schools anyway, weren't a part of that. And what's happened since is that now most of the schools are a part of the Common App.
Right.
So if you're applying, it really becomes a matter of just how many boxes you check, right? And whether you want to pay the application fee for those schools. So suddenly you can apply to 25 schools, right, by checking that box.
Well, so over 900 schools are on the Common App. The Common App limits it to 20.
Okay, so so you can apply to 20 schools on the Common App.
Right.
Okay.
So theoretically, yes, that is possible. We strongly advise against it.
Sure. But that has led to more applicants applying to more schools.
Right.
And therefore more competitiveness in the process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you counsel students as far as, like, where should you apply?
Right. So can I talk a little bit about how unique Santa Fe approaches the...
I would love nothing more than for you to talk about that.
So I think what I love about Santa Fe Christian more than any of the other schools that I've come across, and on a lot of these counselor fly-in programs and through our professional association, I don't know if everyone knows, but Steve Strumple, Geraldine Johns, and I were members of the National Association of College Admissions Counselors. We're very active in our national and regional organizations. And as a result, we get to talk to a lot of college admissions officers and a lot of other counselors from other high schools, private schools, all around the country. So again, part of why I think my job is best job in the world, but I digress there. So
I'm feeling very insecure suddenly, Nancy, like I'm in the wrong field here.
But what I like about our model is we get to start working with students from a young age. And I think that's the benefit of our K-12 approach. You know, we get to know students in the spring of their 8th grade year. And we get to work with them throughout their time in high school. So I joke with my students and parents, we get to kind of, stalk you all throughout high school, not in a creepy way, but we really want to get to know our students and we want to expose them to a lot of different opportunities and get them to look at more than just the name of the school. And we want them to know, why is it a good fit for them and why God is calling them to that school? And is it a place where they can really utilize the gifts and the talents that God gave them?
Yeah. So I want to pick up on that before we get more into some specifics and some details, because I know in my role, I see a lot of students who are really stressed about the college process. It feels like the pressure has ratcheted up. All the things you're supposed to do has ratcheted up. The results, it's so competitive now. There are more schools where it just feels like a roll of the dice. How do you help students balance that college pressure and stress with also, like, at the same time, you want them to be doing the things that they can do to put themselves in the best position?
Right. So I think, again, one of the things that I love about Santa Fe are all the opportunities our students have. We had the opportunity this morning to sit with our blue and gold officer for the Naval Academy, and he was talking about qualities like leadership and athletics, extracurricular activities, academic rigor. And those are all the things Santa Fe offers. And I know personally from my daughter's experience when she graduated in 2019, she was able to play sports, be in the musical, as well as take AP courses and pursue her dream of becoming an artist and a graphic designer. So all of that really helps make applying to college pretty, I mean, not easy, but like when they're filling out their applications, they have a lot to be able to write about and add to their resume. And as far as our role goes, Steve Strimple, he's been here a little bit longer than I have, and he's really very insightful about crafting the college list and how it comes down to having a healthy, well-balanced list. I tell some students, you're playing it too safe. Maybe you should add a reach school. Every healthy college list should have safety or target and then range schools as well as reach schools. And sometimes, I'll have students say, hey, I really want to go to XYZ University. And I'm like, gosh, that school has like less than a 4% acceptance rate. And, honestly, it's not my role to say whether or not that student's going to get in or not get in. I'm not the admissions officer. If God's put it on their heart, then he's put it on their heart for a reason. And it may be because he has a plan for them that leads them there. But it could also be because he has a plan for them that maybe that door closes, but then something else opens as they pursue that school, so.
Well, but I know from experience, it's pretty tough to convince a 15, 16, 17-year-old, right, that maybe that's the case.
Right.
How much of it is helping them see that there is a wide range of schools out there beyond just, the 8 Ivy League schools or, the top UC schools? Or, like, what do you do to help kind of broaden their eyes to the amount of awesome places out there?
Yeah. So early on, we get our students, a couple of things. All of our ninth graders have the opportunity to sit for the PSAT in the fall. And when they take the PSAT, then they are on the radar of College Board and the Student Selective Search Service, and they'll start getting emails from colleges. So that's one way for them to start getting to know different schools. The second is we start working with them on something called Naviance, and this is a program that they're going to use throughout their time at Santa Fe. And there are other programs similar to Naviance, but for now, that's what we're using. So it starts with ninth grade doing their personality profile for them to really know themselves. And their personality is really an eye-opener for them sometimes. We also have them do a learning style inventory so they can see what types of environments they learn best in. And then in the sophomore year, and that also leads to a careers exploration. And when they look at careers, it also then suggests colleges that have majors that leads to those careers. So it's multifaceted. We don't want to start, hammering college from an early age, because it shouldn't be about college. It should be about you finding your potential here at Santa Fe, getting involved in things, building a community, and the college admissions is going to be a byproduct of that. So
I love that so much, right?
Yeah.
And I know one of the things that you've said too is there's a school out there for everybody.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of understanding who you are, how God made you, and where you best fit.
Right.
And I love when I get to overhear you having that conversation with students. But you mentioned it doesn't have to be about college per se from the beginning. So that's a good segue to, you start with 8th graders, right? They're the spring of their 8th grade year. Or if they're going to be new to our school, maybe summertime before they are admitted in 9th grade or before they start 9th grade. What does that meeting look like? What does the beginning look like for an 8th grader or even a 9th grader?
Yeah, absolutely. I love meeting with our incoming freshmen. We talk about their 4-year plan, and that goes over all of our graduation requirements that are designed to position them for college admission as a college prep school. but it also helps us to get to know their interests. And maybe they're really exploring or searching, and maybe they might have multiple interests. I love working with students who have multiple interests, and there are colleges where they can fully explore all of those interests. As well as colleges where if a student says, I want to be an engineer, then that's what they're going to study exclusively.
Yeah.
So I love getting to know them, what they're involved in, what they're interested in. As a department, we keep a robust list of enrichment programs. So if a student says, hey, I'm really into music and I want to be part of the band, helping them craft that schedule and what that 4-year plan looks like to make sure band is part of it throughout their time at Santa Fe, and then also getting them connected with college programs, some of them some great programs through very selective schools where they can then cultivate that musical talent outside of Santa Fe. So yeah, it's...
Yeah. And then as you go through the years, I mean, one thing I think that's really neat that maybe is underappreciated, but like they can come see you anytime.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, your office is like 20 feet from my office, right? They can walk in and
Right.
sit down and have a conversation and say, I've changed my mind about absolutely everything.
Right, absolutely.
Right? Or say,
And
you
sometimes
know,
seniors come in and say that.
that's got to be fun.
Yes, yes.
But it happens,
It
right? I mean,
does.
how do we, I mean, we can't really expect a 14, 15-year-old to
Right.
like have their life all mapped out, or even an 18-year-old.
Right, exactly.
And so for you kind of become their ally, their confidant, their advisor, you know, over the course of those 4 years.
Right. We love working with students, and we have an open door policy to our students. Naturally, we work in cycles sometimes, so the fall is very much devoted to the seniors and the application cycle. And then we transition to our juniors to get them ready for their upcoming application process. For our freshmen and our sophomores, we meet with them at least once a year. We do a grade level event for every grade's parents, just to keep them informed on what they can be doing to help their students as they proceed through each grade. And after we meet with the freshmen, we're like, hey, this is our time, you know, please. We give them a link to schedule a meeting with us. We encourage them to sit down with us and talk about their summer plans, their ideas for next year's courses, and what their interests are. So, and we go over their Naviance, their personality assessment or their learning profile, and talk about it too. So, yeah, it's all really great stuff.
So how has the pandemic changed things a bit? Like, I know one hot topic that I get questions about is the SAT or ACT and all the testing and schools going test optional. I know that's not all real settled
Right.
yet. So how are we navigating
Right.
that?
Yeah. So again, I'm so thankful and grateful for the network of college admissions counselors that we've built up over the years. And when COVID hit, I had seniors who had their tests rescheduled on them 4 or 5 times, and they could not take a test. And that first year, colleges were pretty much forced to go test optional or test blind. So students who had test scores and felt like they accurately reflected their potential as a student were able to submit them and have them considered. And students who didn't have the opportunity to sit for a test or maybe sat for it really early on just as a practice test, they didn't want to submit those scores. So that's been a little bit of a moving target. Now as we're entering year 2 and then going into the 3rd cycle of students applying into college, it's beginning to be, things are shifting a little bit. You know, one of the blessings of the pandemic is colleges realized, you know, maybe test scores don't really adequately reflect how a student's going to do at our school, and maybe it's something we can release and make optional. The UCs have gone test blind, and the Cal States are probably going to go that way. At least that's the proposal before their academic senate. And we're still waiting to hear from some other schools. But now it's gradually becoming a little bit of a mix, and we're just trying to see what colleges are doing. Going to these conferences is important. Mingling with our college admissions reps and just reaching out to them like, hey, do you guys have a plan for fall 2023 grads, you know, or, you know, undergraduates? So right now we're kind of still in that in-between stage where we're waiting to see. Most colleges that have gone test optional are going to stick with it. Some schools, it is starting to come back, and maybe it's a factor in their scholarships. So we are encouraging students to sit and prepare for a test. It's better to do more
Sure.
and need less than to say, oh, shoot, I should have done this
Right.
later on when it's too late.
So too early to say, hey, don't worry
Right.
about tests, don't take it.
Right.
There's still potentially some benefit to doing that.
Right.
Okay, here's another question. This is a really important one. You ready?
Sure.
What percentage of university mascots, if I named the university, would you get correct?
Oh, my gosh.
I know I see all the pennants in your office.
Right.
There's some in there that I'm like, I didn't know that was a school.
Right. Yes. I'm not quite sure. I will tell you that there are some college mascots that I'm just like, ooh, I don't know if I would have chosen that as a mascot.
Like, for example, Long Beach State. Do you know what they are?
Good question. I'm not quite sure.
I think they're the Dirtbags. I think that is their mascot. So I'd put that in that category.
Okay.
Okay, here's a question for you. Let's say I'm a parent who has an 8th grader who's about to get into high school. What advice would you have for that parent in terms of college admissions and what they can do to help their student over the next 4 years?
Yeah. That's a great question. My biggest piece of advice would be to encourage your student to get to know their counselor. I can think of students right now that, when they were young, just stopped by my office and said, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going into high school, and I'm really excited about it. When can we meet? And it's like, oh my gosh, I love the initiative. And those are things that we can actually write about as we write their letters of recommendation too. Like, wow, this student had so much initiative. They came and met with me on their own volition, and maybe it was a little bit of encouragement from their parents. But it takes a lot of maturity, a little bit of courage to just approach an adult and introduce themselves, and for that student to really get to know their counselor. And I would say that's the biggest encouragement. Like I said, all of our students have our appointment link. We share it with them and as well as their parents. And we've said, please schedule a meeting with us. And sometimes I'll chase a student or two down, like, hey, you remember you wanted to meet with me? Yeah.
That's good. Well,
Let's set that up.
that is part of, it's the same in the academic side
Right.
from classes of the nice things about being here is we notice, right?
Right.
When you stop showing up or when you don't, we notice,
Exactly.
right? So it's nice to be able to kind of redirect that way
Right.
when needed.
Another thing that I really love about our model of meeting with students early is we get to know them and follow them throughout their 4 years here. And in the fall of their senior year, we write letters of recommendation. Actually, we start writing those letters over the summer leading into their senior year. So we get to advocate on the behalf of every one of our seniors. So that is a huge privilege. I feel like I get to almost tell God's story on how He's worked in their lives over the last 4 years. So that's a lot of fun. I also have a bit of a background in journalism, so it's nice to get my writing fix in that way. So that's great. And that's a huge plus of our school. At some schools, especially in the public schools, a lot of counselors, there's a box on the secondary school report form where they can just check, I don't know the student well enough to provide a letter. And, it certainly doesn't hurt a student, at the public schools, but it doesn't really help them either. So to have that additional voice to advocate for a student is really helpful. And I would say, too, when it comes to forming a student's list, we really encourage students maybe not to hold on to one or two things too tightly, because we want them to leave room for God to work in their life, right? Like if you are holding on to so things that your fists are closed, you don't allow Him to bless you with opportunities that you're not even aware of yet, right? And sometimes, teenagers see things very black and white, and that's where we come in and say, hey, have you heard about this school? And did you know about that program? And I really see this as a good fit for you. And I've had students and parents come back and thank me, and so have parents and students thanking, Steve and Geraldine, just for recommending schools that
Yeah.
they didn't consider before that they ended up at, and it turned out to be the best thing. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Nancy, we are very blessed to have you, as well as Stephen Geraldine. And I know having now seen a few cycles of kids come in as freshmen and leave as seniors, that you've been a huge asset to them, and your department's been amazing at guiding them through what can be a really stressful time. So thank you for the work that you do here. Even though you went to UCLA, I think you've overcome that particular barrier.
I will say love is blind. And no, I thank admin for all their support as well. We couldn't do what we do without having a supportive administrative team. So thank you.
Well, thanks again for sharing. And thank you all for listening today to another episode of our Eagle Perspective podcast. If this is your first one, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Music, or other places where podcasts are available. You can also watch our video podcasts on YouTube. We will see you again next time.